So I am delighted today to introduce you to the first in our series on optimizing health and happiness for humans and your animals, with my special guests, Dr. Timo Tastutar and Lance Schuttler. So this first episode today, we are discussing the important subject of what is health, what does it mean, and how can we optimize it? So sit back, enjoy the episode, and very importantly, please do let us know what you think in the comments or the reviews. Thank you. Right, I am delighted to be here today with my two friends and colleagues, and we are starting a new podcast series for you on optimizing health and happiness for humans and animals. So I'm just going to introduce my two guests here today. First of all, we have Dr. Timo Tastutar. And Dr. Tastutar is a veterinarian with a doctoral degree in equine cardiology, who's worked extensively in equine and pet food supplement production and specializes in animal physiology and movement. He has a broad experience in rehab and nanomedicine for horses and pets, and is also involved in pet food formulation and consultation for various companies. He's known for his ability to break down complicated scientific data and concepts and explain that to the general public. I can vouch for that. And like the rest of us, he prefers natural functional solutions to be used as much as possible to avoid the drastic side effects that can often come with short-term solutions. So good afternoon, Timo.
Good afternoon. That exactly, the last sentence exactly describes who I am actually.
Perfect. And Lance Schuttler. So Lance graduated from the University of Iowa with a bachelor's degree in health science and is a CEO and owner of Ascent Nutrition. I love that company, and a holistic nutrition company. Lance is a contributing health and wellness writer at the Epoch Times, and his work includes topics of regenerative agriculture, resource-based economies, and quantum technology. So that's going to be very, very relevant. Lance, how are you?
Great, Catherine. Thank you.
And for those of you that don't know me, I'm a biologist and a holistic health practitioner. And like Lance and Timo, I work in looking at the root cause of imbalances in humans and animals and putting those right as naturally as possible for long-term solutions. So we have got a really exciting discussion today, and this is going to be a first in a series we're doing because it's far too much to cover in one show, looking at how we optimize health and happiness for humans and animals. And it's really important we're going to be bringing animals into this because our animals have got so much to teach us. In fact, at these times when we seem to have gone so off track as humans, which we might get onto today, I think we can learn a lot from our four-legged, feathered and scaled friends. So to kick this off, I'm going to ask you both a short question, but it's a very complex question. What is health? What does health mean to you, Lance?
So, I would have probably given you a different answer even 2 months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago. And I think we're all probably in that same boat, that our concept of health, though there's certain principles that I think we as humans all, agree on, it varies from person to person. But from me and my perspective, health, it encompasses first and foremost balance. So, work-life balance. We know that when things get out of balance in our work life or our personal life, things just start to sway in those ways where, maybe we're not getting as much done with our work, or maybe we're not able to spend as much time with those that we want to spend time with. So balance in that, first and foremost, is part of health for me. But then, going deeper into that, health then applies to the physical body. So the nutrients and the nutrition and the foods that we consume, what are those foods doing for us and how are they supporting us? Are we just eating to eat, or are we eating to live and to thrive? So that really plays a major role for me. Secondly, emotional health. There's the emotional intelligence tests that are out there, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but emotional health clearly plays such a big role in our mental well-being, and then also ties into the physical as well. But, emotionally, if we're overall processing our emotions in healthy ways. And, I certainly am not perfect in that area. I'm continuing to grow and learn and do my best, but learning how to not let emotions get the better of us and breathe through it, process it, understand different modalities and practices we can do to come back to that balance. And then sort of spiritual health that, ties into me also along the same lines of the emotional and mental well-being. But feeling like we're part of something bigger, feeling that we have a bigger purpose and a bigger mission than just, who we are as a individualized sense of self. So really blending all those different things together for a greater purpose in life, healthy, balanced, emotional and mental well-being, tying that into the physical in terms of exercise, activity, outlook, mindset, nutrition, nutrients that we're getting in, and then tying that into our social environments around us. There's been times where I've intentionally isolated myself from people around me, not out of spiting anyone, but just because I needed to focus on myself. And now I'm in a place where I'm enjoying being around people more and more, and getting to know more friends and just spending time with more people outside of that, because I do so much work by myself, with my job and what I'm doing. It's nice being able to have that balance of spending time with people outside of it so that I can, interact with more people, learn new things, hear new things, get different perspectives. So I think it's just an interplay of all those different things is how I think of health. And, it's a constant challenge and joy, I think, for all of us to try to strive towards that.
Wow, that is a really good answer. And I was smiling halfway through that, not at what you were saying, but just because I was laughing, having known Timo and I know each other very, very well. And when you were talking about the emotional expression, no one would accuse you and I, Timo, of keeping our emotions in.
No.
Or our opinions. So we certainly don't suppress our emotions, do we? We can't be.
No.
That's one thing we can't be accused of. But Timo, let's see how you want to add to that. What about you? Have you got any areas that you want to add to that?
Actually, yes. For me, health has something to do more with function. I don't look at it as much as lens from outside. I am looking from inside, and from inside is, do I function? Do my cells function? Do my brain functions? Are my reactions, my perception healthy according to my age? Because human mind as the only brain throughout all animal kingdom that keeps growing with age. Of course, some people go backwards after a while when they reach a certain age, but there are even people, they still growing with 100 years old, and they still expand their horizon and think differently. So this is mental health for me, is can you go the next level each and every time you make a mistake, you learn something, you read something, you enjoy something, you have a nice discussion like now. Can you take something out of it and make it your own? And can you put your own stamp on it? This is the mental health. And the physical health is totally functional. So do you function according to your age? Are you functional? Can you throw a stick? If you have to catch an animal, can you catch it? If you have to climb, can you climb it? If you have to run away from a lion, will you manage? If you have to collect apples from a tree or mangoes, are you able to? So everything that makes you survive and see the next day, if you can do all those things, you're healthy. And if you cannot, then you have to look at it extremely objectively and find out what can be done to alleviate that problem. Same goes for animals. So do they function? Can they tend to their daily lives? Although, of course, sometimes you have arthritis, something's hurt, but that's not unhealthy for a certain age. That's still, how do you say it, expected things, the wear and tear that happens. So nobody expects a 40-year-old car to be a brand new Porsche, but it still might function properly if you take care of it. It still might does its job, right? Same goes for our bodies. For me, health is the balance of function and survivability of the body. And for brain health and spiritual health, and I don't, how do you say, separate them as much, is can you grow? Can you keep growing? And can you isolate yourself and look out from outside to yourself and reflect on yourself, not just emotionally, but totally objectively? Like, can you look at yourself from outside and say, okay, this was crap, this was good, this has to change, and this I cannot change, but I have to live with it. So there are things. And if you are in that position, you are healthy.
This is why this is going to be such a great conversation, because such a simple question, there's so many different answers and everyone's going to look at it through their own lens, aren't they? And it's funny, I was giving some thought to what do I think health is, and I, like you were saying, Lance, if you'd have asked me from 2 weeks ago, I'd probably given a different answer. And if you ask me in 2 weeks' time, I'll probably give a different answer. Well, knowing me, probably 10 minutes' time. That's how quickly I move on. But for me, it's like health is all around energy and how we're using energy on a physical level, on an emotional level, on a spiritual level. And we're going to come into what I mean by that more, but it ties into very nicely, actually. Anyone would think we prepared this and we haven't, is to what you're both saying. I think it's about functionality, and are you able to function as your species is designed to? But even that is up for grabs, isn't it? When we're talking about the conversations about age and about functionality. I mean, I used to do gymnastics as a child, and I look at Olympic gymnasts now, and to me, it's incredible that they're the same species as me.
Really painful to look at.
It's just phenomenal. And even when I was at my peak, I could never do what they're doing. But isn't it amazing how much mindset and that bringing this whole thing together, even what you were talking about age, Timo, about how we use age in a realistic way, but not a self-limiting way. Because I see so many people who might be 60 years old and they're sort of saying, oh, now I'm this age, I can't do this. And I'm thinking, what do you mean? So we can all see people. I mean, I'm 54 now, and I look at people when they say on television, 54-year-old woman, I'm thinking, well, I'm not that woman.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre, isn't it? So there's so much this linking between mind, body, spirit that goes into physical health and what our perceptions are. And, let's talk about our biological needs, talking about humans first, and we can bring in the animals that Timo and I are so passionate about. But, as a human body, when you look at most people now, do you think, and we'll start with you again, Lance, do you think we've gone quite off track in terms of what a human body should be capable of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, tying back into the functionality with Timo, if you just look at, let's use an American as an example. I mean, I think it applies to many people around the world, not everyone, obviously, but many of the Western world. The standard American diet or standard Western diet is limiting so much in so many ways, because first, we're not getting the nutrients that we need on a biological level. We're getting pesticides, synthetic chemicals, neurotoxins, all these different things that get put into our food and into our bodies that we shouldn't even have. And then what happens from there is we start to become debilitated. We are more sluggish in our brain, in our body, so we don't exercise, we don't move. We are then more prone to strains and tears and, just different things that happen with the body. And so it's sort of like a cascading effect where if we aren't taking care of ourselves physically at the fundamental levels, things just start to degrade over time and can quickly happen, just like you said, Catherine. I mean, you can look at people who are in their 40s, low 40s, and they look like they're, late 50s or early 60s. And you can look at someone who's in their 60s who looks like they're in their 40s. It's really, a lot of different things. But, what do we need? Like, clearly we need movement. Like, we're designed to move. We're not designed to sit at computers for 8 to 10 hours a day.
Or sit at all.
Right. Exactly. Great point. and, keeping the blood flowing and keeping movement, that's clearly very important. And, with that, ensuring that we can maximize muscle strength. And, this isn't to say we all need to be bodybuilders, but having movement and having resistance in some of these movements are very important. Like you were talking, Timo, climbing a tree. That's it can be a very strenuous activity depending, but it can also be a very easy activity if that person's strong enough and they have that sort of resistance training that they've been doing, whether at a gym or, outside workouts or just outside play and activity. There's a friend that I have who's a chiropractor down here in South Florida, and he does a lot of different other modalities, and his big work is on balance physically, but also balance with exercise and play. So what he does with his athletes and people he's trained, and I've done some training sessions with him, is if you're not rehabilitating, if you're just working on, like really training, he's always incorporating play into it. Think about the question, do you want to go to the gym and exercise for the next 45 minutes? Your average person will say, well, maybe not, but does that sound fun? No. But if you say, hey, let's go climb some trees, let's go jog on the beach, let's, walk on a tightrope, let's, play with a ball and like use different hand movements, like that's play and that's fun. And you'll remember that. And the body will remember, oh, this is natural and easy, but also challenging and stimulating. So this is what I want to be doing. So, his perspective on things have really helped me open up my mind in new ways, and just learning to bring play back into our life from a physical level, but clearly emotionally. Like if we're out there playing and having fun with our friends, we're going to be laughing. We're going to be not stressed in that moment, at least. And, we can really sort of let go and not, not be focused on, let's say, our work or something that is stressing us.
I'm enjoying Timo's sign language at the same time as well. This is what we're working from home. This is what having children does. So it's fine. Don't worry. I love that. It's so important. And I could feel my whole vibration. I could feel my whole energy change when you were talking about the tightrope. I mean, I always wanted to be in a circus when I was growing up. I don't think I'd been very good at the trapeze because I don't like heights, but the rest of it appealed to me. But, the tightrope walking, I mean, how amazing. I'd love to do that. And it's just like when you get something that's using all your senses that's involved in the exercise as well, just makes such a difference. I mean, Timo, this applies so much to our animals as well, doesn't it? We've spoken about this before.
Yeah, and actually, when do you know a dog is very old? When it stops playing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that means they don't stop playing when they're adults. They stop playing when they can't anymore. We are different. Everybody tells me, why do you play with your children? So why do you go out and jump and run in the kindergarten? Whenever I have to wait for my kids, I play football with the other kids. So I just wait there and I bring basketball balls there and do stuff with the other kids so I can pass my time properly instead of just sitting there and saying, oh, the weather is bad today. It's like, it makes no sense. And the problem is, though, it makes a lot of sense for other people because they are taught to be not moving anymore, not playing because they're not children. So you're grown up now and you work and you procreate and pay for the bills and take your children and family to the holidays when your company lets you do that. And that's life. So, and that destroys us. So it breaks us down. So, and for the animals, it's the same. If you don't let them play, if you take away all their chances to play, they get bored and then they get sluggish and then they get old and they die. And most of the animals die very poorly, very early, because they never have the chance to move enough.
It's something that I find heartbreaking because so many people, I'm obviously going to be very careful with the words I use to describe this because of the platforms we're going on. But, over the last 2.5 years, a lot of people have seen what it's like to have liberties taken away from them and have restrictions put on them that they never thought that they would have put on them. And then we look at how we teach our children to look after animals. So how many people have animals in cages, whether it's a guinea pig, a rabbit, a rat, a hamster, you name it, fish in tiny little fish tanks, horses in fields that are tiny, dogs that are left alone all day, cats that are kept inside. Now, I know there's always occasions when you're rescuing and things like that, that I'm not talking about those sort of extreme situations, but the general rule. To maintain health and all the aspects that you've both thought of earlier, to be able to live and function like you as a species was allowed to, and that involves choices as well, you know, making choices. And I think this play, you've hit on something so important, because so many humans now, their bodies, our perception of what's healthy has gone so off track. We know there's an obesity epidemic everywhere in the Western world really now, and none of us had that when we were at school. You might have, Lance, but certainly Timo and I didn't. We know there's an autoimmune epidemic. We know that despite never before has so much been spent on pharmaceutical research and R&D, then that the general health of most of the nations has gone down drastically, because I think so many of us have forgotten what it means to be humans and what we're designed to do and how much we're designed to move in a day. And doctors now in some areas are prescribing nature as a therapy for depression and mental health issues, but it's just as important. You can't really separate the physical, emotional and spiritual health, can you?
No. And from my perspective, you cannot. And the reason for that is, even from the nutrition point of view, certain vitamins, minerals, when they are not there, you cannot mentally be healthy. So you depend on the physical for your mental and spiritual health. If it's not there, you are in a bad position. For instance, a lot of suicidal thoughts come from bad nutrition. Your brain cannot work out things anymore. Like things that I would say, all right, next week I will look at it. Suddenly it becomes so obsessive and it becomes like a mountain in front of you. Things that you normally tackle easily, suddenly it becomes unsolvable because your body is depressed and mentally you are depressed. And in a situation, you cannot see any light at the end of the tunnel anymore. And that's also depends, we will come to it later in a later video maybe even, but your subconscious mind is constantly reprogrammed and mixed up with input from outside. So if you have an unhealthy, I want to say unfriendly or uncompetitive also environment, you are constantly pushed to a point where you don't want to go on anymore. And even if your heart wants it, you are physically and subconsciously not in a position to save yourself. So you have to be somewhere where people are more encouraging, people are more driven, and more driven people will always, not always positive, but more driven people will always move something in you. It's not important if it's negative or positive, but they will change you and change you in a position that you can decide now what you want to do with that input. But you have to choose that input for yourself. And from that on, if you choose it consciously, then your subconscious mind will be slowly reprogrammed with your new environment. And with the right nutrition, you can get out of any problem you have and move forward. But if you're depressed all the time, which is for many people, especially during and after the pandemic shortly, it is so hard to solve your own problems, super hard.
So we're going to give you some solutions today, we hope. And I just want to pick on, before we move on to the next bit, Lance, I can remember my 16-and-a-half-year-old lab that I lost very recently, gorgeous, gorgeous dog. And I can remember the joy of when I received your algae oil, the DHA algae oil. Now, she'd been on a good home-prepared diet for a long while. And also, I'd noticed a step increase improvement in her 6 months earlier, when I'd used the Clean Slate Roots product to detox her body. And that, my husband and I just couldn't believe it. Almost overnight, she went up to a different level of playfulness, Timo. As you said, she started playing again because she could. But then when I introduced your algae oil and she was selecting that, exactly the same thing happened again, Lance, and she went up to the next level improvement. I can remember phoning my mother up and just saying, you're just not going to believe it. Stars like running. I took a little video of her running across the field. And this is why I think it's so challenging for people, because we've forgotten how good we can feel because of all these pressures and the way society is encouraging us to live, with the food, the processed food, the chemicals, the toxins, the water. I mean, water is just a massive thing, as we've discussed elsewhere, that actually when you take these small steps to start getting you feeling good again, everything starts moving in the right direction. You tip those balance of the scales, don't you, to feeling, going from a feeling like you were just saying, Timo, of hopelessness to, yes, actually, I can get this back. And wow, I've just forgotten how good I can really feel. So how do people measure health? I mean, what are some ways that people can measure health? Have you got any suggestions for that, Lance?
Yeah, and I'll talk about a few things, but I also want to answer this question by also coming back to what Timo was saying on nutrition and how it can affect mental health. So one example, and this is like really something I've dug into very deeply and really tried to pass this information along to a lot of people, is specifically vitamin B3, niacin. Okay, and there's a PhD. He was a medical doctor and I think he was a biochemist named Dr. Abram Hoffer. He's passed over now, but he's written several books, and he was helping many people with alcoholism, schizophrenia, depression, and several other like severe mental conditions. And his big protocol was vitamin C and vitamin B3. And, you know, as you both know, he was literally, not everyone, but many people, just literally taking away the schizophrenia very fast with high doses of B3 and vitamin C. And so that's just a really profound example of, you know, what you're saying, like someone's in that sort of state and then you give them a couple very simple vitamins and it takes it away. And so that's profound in that, yes, the physical does absolutely affect the emotional and spiritual. I mean, if those people weren't getting those nutrients, they'd still be in those states of mind, most likely. So,
Yeah.
you know, the nutrient deficiencies is a big issue. And, you know, that sort of ties into how can we measure these things? As we all know as well, the daily recommended value for different vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and other nutrients typically is very low. And it's not like the standards set by the big agencies around the world really only are amounts that can sort of prevent, let's say, some conditions in some ways, but not enough to actually make a person thrive, you know? So having a little bit of vitamin C might prevent scurvy, but is it actually going to get you to that healthy level of where you want to be for what vitamin C can actually do? You know, so looking at the nutrients and actually getting an abundance of those nutrients, clearly very important. But a couple big ones that really stand out to me is vitamin D3. You know, that test and understanding how much vitamin D we have in our body. We know that vitamin D literally turns on thousands of different genes to express in healthy ways. If we get enough, it affects every system in the body, particularly the brain, mental health, cognition. And then, you know, another test as well that's not as well known, but really should be right up there with the D3 is the omega-3 index percentage. You know, those omega-3s are so crucial for so many things in the body, and those fats are in the receptor or in the cellular membranes of all of our cells. And so if we don't have enough of those omega-3s, every system in our body and every function is going to be limited, at least in some way. And when we do have enough, if we can get that percentage up, then, you know, theoretically, everything in the body starts to become better. Because again, if every cell has it and you give the body the right amounts, cells are going to work better, which means organs are going to work better, and all the processes are going to work better in the body.
It's key, isn't it? The omega-3 to cellular communication as well, isn't it? And energy transmission.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that we know, the DHA, one of those omega-3s, is concentrated in the brain, nervous system, and eyes. And in the retina and the cones of the eyes, they literally take the photons from the sun, the light energy, and convert it to an electrical signal. And then it relays the information to the brain and throughout the nervous system for the nervous system and brain to operate the whole body. So, we are beings of light. We know that, both physically and, spiritually, we can say. And, it's quite profound what DHA can do in terms of photonic energy transfer.
Fantastic. And we've done, I will put in the show notes below some links to some other shows, because it's very important, the type of DHA, where you get it from and the quality, because there's a huge amount of contamination issues with fish oils, for example. So it's really, really important. And one of the things your company does is the most gorgeous, very, very pure algae oil that both Timo and I absolutely love.
Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. That's exactly right. It is a beautiful golden oil, and it really, we have a lot of success with it, both for humans and animals. And we only launched it a handful of months ago, but it's very popular already, and the word is spreading, because just like you said, it is an alternative to the fish oil, because the fish eat the algae. So let's just go to the source. Let's just bypass the fish and the fish oil, because we don't need it. Let's just go straight to the source. And so that's what we do.
And I just love it for all the ethical reasons as well. I mean, one, it's just a fantastically produced, ethically sourced product, but also you haven't got the ethical issues of unnecessarily killing a fish, and we all know how they're struggling. So Timo, you are an expert on measurement, aren't you, of health? I mean, it's something that you do a lot with your animal clients.
Yeah, that is correct. But I have to say that this is the most funky business in health industry, is measuring the quality and the needs of individuals. So if they say a typical individual needs 512 milligrams or micrograms of B12, let's say, there is no data of what type of B12 is necessary, in which way it will be absorbed, and how much of it will be absorbed, and how much of it will be stored, and how much of it is actually useful. So it's not there, right? So this is the problem. For instance, in dog food and cat food industry, there are some vitamins, minerals totally misunderstood, and some of them are overkill the way it's put into food, like vitamin D3. It's just overkill. And on the other hand, there are some that are not even recognized properly, like taurine, not recognized properly in how much that is needed, or omega-3 fatty acids for cats and dogs are mostly misrepresented by the food companies, and nobody really understands what the needs of their animals are. But the bigger problem is, Catherine, we don't know what we need ourselves. For instance, for vitamin B12, Japanese have twice as much daily recommended amount than, let's say, Europe. Twice as much. But they eat so much algae, they eat so much seafood. For them, it is very clear, but they have the highest ratio of dementia for the age. So they know they have to push the population to eat more B12, so they stay healthier for a longer time, right? So this is the situation where measurement is really, really high. But what we can measure is function. So if somebody tells you, oh, you're 30, you shouldn't play full-time football anymore, it's like, I mean, look at Tom Brady. I mean, he is now in Tampa. He just crashes everyone. He still does. He doesn't give two about who's telling what about his age. And
I thought you were talking about proper football.
Yes, it's American football.
Soccer. Yeah.
It's American football. And I love the game. Yeah. So, and he doesn't care. He never cared. So And he is a very good example for everyone who wants to understand what you can do, what you have to do to stay healthy. You have to keep your functioning. So you look at your base functions and you have to make sure that these functions are functioning. So for instance, when I maintain my bicycle, I don't just look at somewhere, what does my bike need to be healthy? I turn my wheel. If it doesn't turn right, I clean it up, I grease it, and I know that it's going to turn again. Same with you. If you're thirsty, you know you need water. If you're overweight, you know you have to lose weight. If you are skinny, you know you have to put some muscle on. So it's not rocket science. It's actually quite easy to measure your health. But what you cannot measure is if you don't function and you don't check the function, you might think you are healthy or your dog is healthy, but it isn't. So if you don't know how good coat looks, strong hair looks, good nail looks, if you don't know what real weight to bone ratio is right. For instance, I have like Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, girly man hands. And right, so my bone structure shows that I can be maximum 83 kilos with maximum muscle and 10% body fat. So if I stay at 10% body fat, I cannot be more than 83 kilos. And there are really good calculations for that. So for men and women. So if you can really check according your size and according your bone structure, what your maximum muscle mass can be, then you know exactly how heavy you should be maximum with proper amount of body fat, right? I see the opposite side. I see a lot of women who are doing heavy sport. They have 8% body fat. They don't get their periods anymore. Their body doesn't function because their body needs more fat and they are not having it. And then they are not women anymore. I mean, they are strong individuals with 2X chromosomes, but their function, female function, is gone.
Mm.
Yeah, and this is the same with older men who lose all their testosterone because they are filled with body fat and don't eat the right things, and they have no testosterone. These are guys with XY chromosome and overweight, but they are not men anymore because the function is gone.
This is why I love this. We're not politically correct on this podcast. We promise never to be politically correct.
Yes, but I don't have to be. So it's like the description is there. You know, there is no discussion about it. It's just what your body can do. Your body, it's like your genes and your chromosomes, they're set. You know what they can do. And if you can fulfill that function, you are that. If you cannot fulfill that function, you are not that anymore. And that's what we have. That's why I always say reflect and objectively self-assess. Because some months ago, before I started basketball, I was sluggish. I couldn't move anymore. I feel my knees need more movement. I started with basketball. The first week I was dead, like all muscles or bones are like hurting. Now I run like crazy, 2.5 hours. I shoot the ball, press, block and hit and steal and do everything that a normal basketball player would do. Of course, a bit slower. I'm 47, but still good. So this is what I mean with function. So according to my body function, I can still jump, crouch, roll, hit, keep, grab, push, everything that a male should do in his age, like my age, I can do. And this is a clear sign of health for me. So this is the right direction to health. 6-7 months ago, I was not healthy enough to fulfill this role, right? That's why objective self-assessment is the way to health.
I want to catch up. I really want to, because this links really into the mental and spiritual side of things that we're coming on to. But I think this is such an important point. I just would like to have a little discussion about it with you two, because this self-assessment is really important. This is why everyone needs a friend like Timo. Timo will tell me if I'm getting fat. Timo will tell me you tell me when I'm stressed. You can notice it so quickly. So can my animals, which I take it much better from my animals than I do from Timo, but that's the cats can say anything to me and I'm fine with that. But no, in all seriousness, you've got to lighten up. And if we've lost the ability, I think it's ridiculous now that as a species, we need nutritionalists. for any species, because
Yeah.
going back a few generations, our ancestors knew how to feed themselves healthily. Now, they didn't have the temptations that we have at our fingertips now. They didn't have the awful toxic cookware. They didn't have the processed foods that are more plastic than food. You know, if it didn't look like it had come from an animal or a plant, it wasn't food, and that's what they had access to. So often choice, you know, choice has got to be balanced, don't you think, guys, in terms of too much choice can be a bad thing. So when you're given the choice of foods that are no longer real foods, that's not helpful to anyone, is it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, you think about Uber Eats or any sort of food delivery service today. As you were talking about that, Catherine, that's what immediately came to mind for me was, you know, just not even a handful of years ago, we didn't have access to that. But now, if you've got the money to do so, you can literally order any food you want and you can have it delivered to your door and you don't have to move an inch. You can sit on your couch, stay right there, consume, consume, consume. And, you know, oftentimes if you're in that sort of rut or that place of just consuming junk food, it's easier and more attractive to continue to consume that junk food. You know, it's hard to say, all right, I'm going to give up XYZ foods and start to incorporate more fruits and veggies, or, you know, more beans, or whatever it is that you want to incorporate. It's hard to do that. It can be to get over that hump. And today things have just become so easy to not do the things that are healthy and things that are not health promoting, you know? So the Uber Eats as an example, like we can just literally get that food delivered. And I mean, I've utilized it, but I check myself of, okay, am I doing this because out of convenience, or am I just doing this just because, you know, I kind of want the thrill of having food delivered and I know it's going to be something tasty, you know, things like that. So it's a balance, but with the overabundance of choices, it really does come down to discipline, and we have to self-discipline. Like Timo was saying at the beginning, only we can make the choices for ourselves. We can have a lot of help from others, encouragement, support, articles, videos, books, all of that. But at the end of the day, it literally comes down to us making the choice.
Yeah, it's so important. I think, you know, at the end of the day, realizing the first step is being honest with yourself and where are you now? So if you are overweight, if you're underweight, if you're lacking muscle, if you're lacking flexibility, if you're depressed, if you've got a particular health condition, it's really important to be honest with it and then sort of go into solution mode, isn't it? Because friction, I talk about this with my friend Bryce when we talk about yoga a lot. Friction is so important because that's what forces your body, your mind, your spirit to make changes. But obviously it's much nicer if you do it from a place of choice than when that's forced on you because something has gone drastically wrong. If you've got any
I
comments
totally
on that,
agree. Same goes for the animals. So they actually tend to choose the right thing as long as you give them the right thing. But once you engineer things to taste good, so once you engineer things to trigger certain bodily responses, like our food also for humans are the same, then you start to manipulate the healthy choice to something that is made subconsciously always into your favor. And this is a big problem. So like Uber Eats and other choices you have, most of the foods we have today is turned into exactly like everything else, a consumable, right? But food is actually not consumable in a sense that it is not there just to have fun with. It's just to rebuild yourself and give you energy. But we look at food now like we would like a watch, a piece of cloth, or this is a commodity like coffee. We buy it, we consume it, and it's gone, and we throw away the package, right? This is now food for us. So, and the schools, nowhere you learn how to cook properly. You don't know how to combine things. For instance, everyone in India would know that you combine rice with chickpeas or beans or something to have your protein properly. mixed, right? And you don't learn that in the West. In the West, you learn, okay, you want to eat something, buy a steak. If you don't have money for a steak, go to Arby's. If you don't have money for Arby's, go to somewhere else where you can buy your stuff cheap. So it's consumable. It's not about the ingredient. It's not about what it contains. It's about, does it taste good? Yes. Can I buy it with the money I have? Yes. Then that's it. So there is nothing left when you think about food. The same goes for pet food. The same. Does my dog eat it? Yes. Can I pay it? Yes. That's the size and that's the type I buy. That's it. Nobody reads what's inside anymore. Right? And this is, even if they read, they don't know what's inside. And now the US is worse than Europe in that sense that you can hide so many things in the label that it's, for instance, like 20 years ago when monosodium glutamate was poo-pooed a lot, they changed in Germany a rule that you cannot put it under spices anymore. So, and they started to use monoglutamate, sodium glutamate from yeast extract. So they started to write yeast extract. So everyone who eats yeast extract think they are eating yeast, but they're actually eating monosodium glutamate. It's just now the name is different. It's hidden there instead of under the spices, right? So yeah, so many things we eat and our animals eat are not food. So they are not physiological. They harm you over the long run. They don't give you enough of stuff you need. And your bacteria change, your microbiome change, your neurotransmitters change. The dominance of different neurotransmitters become imbalanced, that some are too dominant because of the way you eat. And suddenly you start not to function anymore, like your animals. And that includes me, right? It's not like I'm not saying anything bad to anyone. I'm in the same boat. We are in the same boat in this. And not so easy to get away from all the traps. And some of them put deliberately. But for instance, a good example. Do you know which company uses the most potato flavor in their food? Potato flavor.
No.
McDonald's. Because their fries don't taste like potato anymore. It's hard to believe, but they use the most potato flavor, the company that sells the most potatoes in the world.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so that shows you that where we are, that we don't even know what we want and we don't know what we're getting. And that's the consumer mindset, not, how do you say it, not the survivor's mindset or not the grower's mindset, right?
It's funny, isn't it? Because this leads nicely on to when we're going to talk now about mental health briefly. And because you mentioned there the microbiome, and it's something that we cannot go through an optimizing health for you and your animals without talking about the microbiome, because it's absolutely crucial to everything. And if people understood that they are more microbiome than they are human cells, you know, bacteria, fungi, viruses, yeah, exactly. It's just absolutely fantastic, the new research that's coming out, and Zach Bush is my absolute favorite on this. So
my hero for sure.
Yeah, we all love Zach Bush. But it's so crucial. And this leads into, I think, very much in the mental health, because on a physical level with our physical bodies, science has got so reductionist in terms of looking at everything in isolation rather than looking at our bodies as a whole ecosystem itself. And then our bodies were an ecosystem living within an ecosystem. Interestingly, if you look up the definition of nature, there's nothing that mentions humans in it. It's everything outside humans says it all. Now, when you're looking at that related to everything we've just discussed on physical health, and we'll probably come back and do more discussions on the microbiome because it's so important, both in terms of the microbiome and the soul biome and the link between us all. And we build that into looking at the mental health and, you know, what is mental health and how do we know if we're okay in that level? Everything is all connected. And if we look at trying to separate any aspect of ourselves from our environment, from nature, from the planet, then it all starts to go horribly wrong. What do you think about that, Lance?
Yeah, definitely. There's a book that I read a few years ago called The Psychobiotic Revolution, and it talks all about the microbiome, the connection between the gut brain axis, and really just what you said of how microbes in the gut play a direct role in our mental health, cognition, and brain and nervous system function. That book was really fascinating to me. I learned a lot, and it's been a few years since I've read it, but they just talked a lot about a lot of the different strains and how those impact the production of neurotransmitters, particularly serotonin. But what I find even more fascinating is really just, I think it's really hard to measure, which is what are the interplay of those different microbes? We can isolate them and understand what they're doing in their roles, but what happens when we combine all of them? I think it's certainly harder to measure and harder to interpret because it will be dependent on the person. And, there's just a lot of different things that go into it. Timo.
Yeah, there is not so hard way to find out how they interact with each other by checking the gene expression of a healthy person in a healthy environment. Let's say someone who lives in Amazons and has no access to normal daily bullcrap we have, and just take a piece of their crap and check what's inside. Then more or less how the strains have an interaction with each other. Of course, you cannot really pinpoint who's doing what, but since we know very well that most of the cravings come from the bacteria, even the stomach acidity is totally affected by the bacteria. We know exactly how important it is to have a healthy, balanced microbiome, because the way you crave things really depends on what type of bacteria you have, ultimately making you overweight or bulimic or so many different ways, right? So that means the microbiome has a huge impact on the mental health just by manipulating how your intestinal tract works. That's already there. So you don't even have to go deeper what it triggers and everything. But if it already regulates what you want to eat and how much of it you want to eat, there you have your response, so to speak. So that's why I think microbiome is the most important research point, more important than anti-aging and whatnot. I think that's the most important one for physical and mental health.
I would also throw into the pot there that I'd love to see us sort of move away from this need to look and isolate things and work out what they're doing, because one, you've got the observer effect. So we know right down at a molecular level that when you look at an electron, it changes the way it spins, for example. And the same when you start isolating anything. I mean, nothing in nature is isolated, ever. Nothing in any living body, whether it's plant or animal, is isolated. It's all working in conjunction in perfect harmony. And if all three of us took the same supplement, it would work differently in each of us based on our host and what environment we were putting it in. So I think coming back for me, this getting back into tuning into ourselves and being really honest about how we're feeling physically, how we're feeling emotionally, how we're feeling spiritually, and taking action, and then listening to ourselves to what the results we're getting can be so more important than getting strung up on, I need this strain of this, or I need that particular. Yes, there are huge ones that we know that are crucial to pulling everything together, like you've just spoken about earlier, Lance, the DHA and the D3 being two very good examples. But the best thing to get your microbiome back in balance is some of these health tips that are going to help your mental health, like getting out in nature, breathing.
Yep. This is where you get the bacteria anyway. The strains are there where you can be healthy normally. This is the trick. Exactly what I wanted to say from the very beginning. So function is the definition of health. Why? Because you are formed. I don't know if you believe in evolution or not important. You are formed according to your function. And the function happens only in the right environment properly. And that environment is the one that makes you function. So it's hand in hand. The right bacteria are in the right food, and the right food is in the right environment. You are happy and healthy in the right environment. We all are now not in the right environment. So we have to find a way to integrate that right environment and the right food into your daily lives. And we have to find ways to do it sustainable for the future generation too. So that's the job. And that's about it. Happy, healthy life is not having a job till you're 40 and retire and go to a cruise ship. So this is not the definition of healthy and happy, for me at least. So I love cruise ships, but
what about you, Lance? What would you say about all this?
Yeah, I mean, sort of coming back to, what is health and happiness and the functionality. It makes a lot of sense, Timo, what you're saying. And it's a new perspective for me of, we're formed certain ways and we're formed to function. And if we use those functions, then that facilitates and elicits health. And if we're not, then it does the opposite. So going along those lines, I think that if we can just continue to understand, I think education first and foremost is so important, because the more we learn, the more information we have access to, the more choices we can make. And some of those choices are going to be healthier. Like, we can get a lot of information. Some of those choices might not be healthy, but if we get access to more information, we can understand things more and we can make different choices. And, that's such a huge thing. And, why podcasts and YouTube shows and just conversations are so incredible that, we of course had a structure going into this, but this conversation in and of itself has even taken on new parameters and new dimensions based on the input that each of us are giving and how we interpret what each of us are saying. And, for the listeners, it'll be the same thing. There'll be new things that people will learn, things that people have heard, or maybe they heard it in a different way. And maybe it connects new synapses and, forms a new connection literally in the brain.
Totally agree.
It's exciting. I think, the learning and the information is key. And I think we all know that, unfortunately, science, a lot of science, well, this is my opinion, you two can butt in and say whether you agree or not, but a lot of science, for me, science is all about exploration. It's all about asking questions. It's all about challenging, and moving forward in new areas. And unfortunately, there's so much censorship now, which means that a lot of questions aren't allowed to be answered. So at the crux of it, my answer to everyone, I work with clients of all species, humans and animals, and is, how's it working for you now? If all's going great, then keep doing what you're doing. But if you're being honest and you think, do you know what, there's a better version of me physically, emotionally, spiritually, or there's, I can see that my dog's not as vibrant as it should be. I can see that my cat's not acting like a cat should be, whatever it should be, then there's always more we can do to learn and listen. And it's balancing all the forms of information and then letting it sit with you and seeing what resonates. Because unfortunately, so many scientific research papers now are funded on a very reductionist principle, not looking at bringing the whole together. And that's how people get the funding to do certain research. And a lot of what we're talking about, it would be very difficult for someone to get funding. So I think exploring some of the other resources that we've already mentioned today, and I will put some good resources that we all recommend below in the show notes, to challenge yourself to think in different ways. But it's so exciting when you start resetting and taking those little steps forward and think, oh, I can do that now. I can actually climb a tree now. Instead of hesitantly climbing a tree, I'm going to try as soon as we finish this and see how far I get. The only time I manage to climb trees is when I'm rescuing one of the cats. And then miraculously, I can do it.
Yeah, it's a good reason.
It's interesting, mind over matter, because when I've got that purpose and my baby's been chased up there, normally by one of my other cats, then I'll go up that tree. If not, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can get up there. It just shows, doesn't it?
One of the reasons you are still able to climb that tree is because you have one there.
Yes.
So you are not living somewhere where you have like 10, 20, 40, 50-story buildings with no real tree. And when you get out, the first thing you see is a yellow taxi. It's not that place, right? And that gives you the chance at least to function as a normal person. But because we make our environments unhealthy and unnatural on purpose all the time, that's where it goes wrong for all of us and our animals, of course.
That's a really good point. And I'm just conscious of the time of this. There's so much more we wanted to cover, but we might have to do that in our next episode. So should we finish off by go around the table and each give a few top tips for people for what they can do moving forward to look at optimizing their health? Lance, would you like to start?
Yeah, so a few things. First, getting sunlight in the eyes in the morning. And, we've talked about this before, but even if it's a full-on cloudy day, there's still enough photons coming through, bursting through those clouds, to where if you aren't wearing sunglasses, those photons will hit the retina of the eyes and, start cascading so many different effects in the body. And, just basically what it's doing is it's helping mood and happiness and really just turning on the brain and nervous system for the day. Clearly exercise, even if it's something just as simple as a walk. I'm really a big proponent of, if it's even just the simplest thing, like that's literally better than nothing. Of course, if you can get into some sort of regimen of exercise, playing sports, like all of that's just above and beyond. But getting some sort of movement in the morning, getting sunlight in the eyes. And I also am really big on alone time. And you can use that in a multitude of ways, whether that's, meditation, prayer, focused affirmations, writing, reading, maybe a combination of all of them. All of that really helps for me in the morning and the evening to sort of set my day at the beginning and end the day at night.
Love it. Absolutely love all of those. Timo, what about you?
Mine is a bit more grim. Self-assess objectively, and forget about you are all beautiful, you are all inclusive. Oh, it's so good that you came. It's already good that you participated. Scratch all that. Look at yourself. Are you competitive? If you have a lion behind you, will you survive? If you have to hunt something, will you survive? If you want to eat something, will you manage without the supermarket? Or if you're even able to cook your own meal, if your significant other is not around, or your mother, whoever. And if all of these questions are positive, like, yes, I can, then you're in a good place. Then just improve yourself. And if you are saying, oh, no, then you are not fit to survive. And that's where the mentally problems start. If your body knows you cannot survive, but you are not aware of it, that's where the depression mostly starts. So to avoid that, to move forward, self-assessment objectively is key. And don't forget, not important what your best friend says, your aunt says, your grandmother says. They all have their own views. The only one that can assess you properly is you. So do it because you know yourself the best.
I agree. I can't disagree with either of you. I'd love to, but I can't. And I think that's okay. So mine are, I agree with that. The one person in this life you cannot fool is yourself and your cat. But let's forget the cats for now. You cannot fool yourself. So this is going to lead to disharmony, dis-ease, if you're constantly trying to tell yourself something you're not. But when you recognize where you are now, then all of those tools that you were talking about, Lance, can be put into play beautifully, one little step at a time. So my things would be do everything that Lance and Timo said, but I'm a big component of asking for help and helping others. So one of the things I think that can help move you forward physically and emotionally and spiritually is if you're feeling stuck, do something to help others. And by that moves you, that shifts you into a different energetic space to take action. Breath work, breathing. There's so many different breath techniques, so much free resources available on all sorts of different platforms. Everyone knows I love Wim Hof. There's so many different breath techniques out there. It's something you can all do, because when you tune in with your breathing, you know, we need breathing to climb the tree, to run away from the lion, to go for the walk, to play. And when you start getting some control back of your breath, you start getting a lot of control of both your physical and emotional body. It's really powerful to control your breathing when you're around a stressed animal, and see how that changes your whole energy field. And my third tip, because I don't want to overlap with any of you two, would be set yourself one little target. All you want to do is take that first step in a new direction. Don't make it huge. You know, if you can't run away from the lion at the moment, get a really fat friend that you can put behind you, and then they'll get them first. But in all seriousness, one little step, go away from listening to this and just make one commitment to yourself of something that you're going to move forward with today.
Like, don't open the fridge after 22. Because opening the fridge is something we do subconsciously. We just go there and open, and then start to consciously think what's inside. So if you can think about opening the fridge consciously, you are now one step forward with your control over what you want to eat and when you want to eat. That's a starting point. So think about, when you approach the fridge, do I really want to open it now? It's 22 o'clock and I'm going to go to sleep in half an hour. Do I want to have those extra calories? Did I have eaten enough today? And that's a very nice mindset to think about your food also, because you learn then, do I need the calories now or I don't? So I think that's a good start in getting healthier.
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's those little steps that make all the difference. We don't all have to aim for Mount Everest straight away, or in my case. I'm not going up there. But, you know, those little choices that you're making just brings back your control and your power, and you'll see everything about you change. Thank you so much, both of you. I've loved that conversation. I hope our listeners have. I've really enjoyed myself anyway. I hope you both have.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we will be back for the next in the series next week. So please do let us know in your comments below. Please let us know what you would like us to talk more about, what you found interesting, what steps and tips that you've got that you can share, because everyone will have something different to share. And, you know, that's what's going to help us all find something that resonates with us as individuals.
Yes, I totally agree. See you next week.
Absolutely, Catherine. Thank you. Thank you both.
Bye.